going to do a video to give you an overview of our starter dog program. So any of our puppies that don't sell, and even some people will put deposits in on little young pups, 5 weeks, 6 weeks of age, to go through our starter dog program. The dogs that don't sell, we move over here. This is the biggest part of what our business does. We'll move them over here. We microchip all of them. All of the boards are labeled. Parents, microchip number that it ends in, the color of the dog, and a number as they move through our 5-step program. So we have 5 steps we put them through. We call a basic imprinting program before we actually start our obedience work in organizing the retrieve. So we'll go through next and show you a few steps of our program so you can have an idea on how we start the dogs and progress them forward. So the first step of our program, we actually start with the dogs in the kennel with a string attached to a small piece of sock. And we get these young puppies to where they love to grab that small piece of sock as soon as they come off of the dam when they're weaned and put into the puppy pens. From there, they come into this hallway and they learn to retrieve that little sock. And it's not about a 30-foot retrieve at this point. It's just about getting the sock, and eventually we get them, bring it right back to us, and we start building the retrieve desire. From this point right here, the dogs actually get moved over to tennis balls, canvas dummies, and then they get moved completely over to the next step. So after the hallway work is complete, we actually take the puppy out here into about a 30-foot by 30-foot enclosed area. And in this area right here, puppy has the option to get the dummy and go elsewhere with it, or get the dummy and bring it straight back to the human. Okay, so after the puppy's retrieving well in our second area, we bring them out here in this area, maybe 100, 120 feet long, by about 50 or 60 feet wide. Once the dog's retrieving real well out here, coming straight back to hand, this is about the time that we introduce some shooting. Sometimes we use a pistol, depending on the dog. Sometimes we'll move forward with the 12 gauge. It all depends on the dog and how the dog's taking the things. So once the young dog's retrieving well in the enclosed area, we come out here to the bigger open area. Make sure that the dog understands, even in a big open area, he goes and gets the dummy and brings it straight back. At this point, we've usually got him on the rubber dummies that we use for the remainder of the training. After the dog does well in the big open area, we actually have a little bit of tall grass in here that we'll use to get the dog coming in using his nose. So once the dog's doing great in the wide open area, we'll start throwing the dummy into the grass where it disappears. This is where you'll get that dog learning to use his nose and actually smell and win the dummy, and understand that sometimes he's got to follow a scent cone to find the dummy, because sometimes my dummy goes out of sight. If at any part our dogs start to fail in one area, we'll back them up and go to the previous area. Make sure he has that mastered before we advance him forward too quick. At this point in our program, there's still zero pressure. Everything is simply come out, retrieve, 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 and have fun. It's what we call our basic imprinting program. Recording?
Good job, Mission. Good job, man. Good job, buddy.
Okay, so once we have our dogs imprinted in here to retrieve and come back to hand, we'll actually then take them out of all of the enclosed areas into our open main training area.
Good job. Come on.
So at this point, when he comes out, all he knows is retrieve, 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 retrieve. So when the dogs come out of the enclosed area, we want to make sure that out here, they still retrieve and come straight back into the human. And when the dog does that, then we go to the water with them.
Good job, man. Good job.
So once we get the dogs out in the main area, we introduce them to the water. Once we get the dog started in the water, we just slowly stretch it out. We like to get them going around 15 yards out before we move them over to the next step of the program. In this area right here is where they'll actually learn to pick up frozen birds, and they'll actually learn that a lot of shooting while they're retrieving doesn't matter. We don't want them looking at the gun. We don't want them worried about the gun. We don't even want it phasing them. We just want the dog thinking he comes out the kennel to retrieve dummies, frozen birds, land, water, tall grass, and every time he retrieves, he's coming back to the person with the dummy. Now, I started the dog program. Actually, we run quite a few dogs through it each year. We have about 5 trainers that work full time, and they take these dogs through these steps and they move them through each year. Our dogs are guaranteed to perform to the standard that our descriptive video shows. It's on our website, on our Started Dog page. If you get a started dog from us and you put a deposit in, you pick a young pup out, if he doesn't make it, we replace that young pup before he even leaves here so that you get what your contract says that you're getting. These dogs are not 3-year-old seasoned dogs. They're usually between the ages of about 8 and 11 or 12 months of age. And if you give them their first season to make sure they understand that the way that we've trained them and that you've worked with them is the same way that they hunt, they generally make any hunter happy. We also have descriptive videos that are unlisted on YouTube in a started dog package that we'll send over to you. These videos will step you through your first 10 to 20 days. It'll show you all the commands. It'll give you day-by-day instruction on what to do with your dog so that your dog understands when he gets at a new location with a new handler that he's supposed to do all the same exact stuff that we trained him here. As long as you follow through these steps smoothly, there shouldn't be many issues. If there are ever any questions, all you have to do is call us or email us, and we'll be glad to help you step your dog through any hang-ups that you have.